Anthony Edwards had a career high of 53 points in a loss against the Detroit Pistons. To me, that was very telling. Just he was able to put up 53 points, but he still lost that game. And not only did he lose it, his team lost the game by double digits. So it shows again how Anthony Edwards has been struggling this season, not just statistically, but with just getting his team wins. The Timberwolves are not as good as they were at this point in time last year. I believe if you look at their record last year, I'm just going to pull it up right now just to show the difference at this point in time. Let's just look at the record. After 34 games last year, the Timberwolves were 25-9 last year. They were 25-9 last year at this point. Currently at this time, they're 17-17. So Anthony Edwards is struggling to keep his team playing at a 500 level, just carrying them above just barely mediocrity, just essentially. Just he's been struggling throughout the season, I feel, to get wins. And statistically, he's been struggling. When you look at his numbers, I know it's very deceptive. Last year, he averaged 25.9 points. This year, it's down to 25.3. And you may be asking yourself, like, that's not really a drop. That's pretty much the same thing. You could say it is. It's very deceptive. But then you look at his field goal percentages. I think that tells the other story. He shot 46 overall from the field last year. This year, he's shooting 44. That, to me, is a big drop. I always have felt my rule for perimeter players is that once you're shooting below 45, you're less efficient as a player. Just that applies to perimeter players. For bigs, I feel they should be shooting 50 or above overall from the field. So he's been less efficient this year than he was the previous 2 years when he cracked finally being an all-star. Prior to being an all-star, he was not shooting above 45. So that shows you how much a difference efficiency makes in this game. And he's just not been efficient this year. And I think a lot of it has to do with not being able to play with Karl-Anthony Towns anymore. Karl-Anthony Towns is showing now with the Knicks how underrated he was when he was with the Timberwolves. He had a reputation of being soft with the Timberwolves, probably not as marketable or charismatic as Anthony Edwards, so it kind of masked how good he was. But he was a very important piece of their team, and he did a lot for Anthony Edwards. If you think about what he did for Anthony Edwards on the court, he allowed Anthony Edwards a lot more easier opportunities to score. This is evident by just Anthony Edwards getting double teamed more this year. He just had this one quote the other day where he talked about it a few days ago about the frustration of being double teamed. And here's what Anthony Edwards said. "It's not how I want to play, of course. I'm only 23. I don't want to just be passing the ball all night, but the way they're guarding me, I think I have to. Super hard, super hard, super hard, super hard because I'm wired to score the ball." So this was his reaction to being double teamed. This was like a few days ago, I think several days ago after a loss, I believe. But yeah, it just shows the frustration because with Karl-Anthony Towns, it was harder for teams to double him. It was harder for them to get the help defense because they always had to focus on Cat. So that freed him up a large deal from facing a ton of double teams. And that historically has always been true for perimeter players when they're playing with a great big man. It just opens up the game easier for them and just makes it so much easier also to win games because the defense has a hard time game planning against your team. It's like with Kobe and Shaq, for example, is one of the best examples. When those two were playing together, it was very hard to stop both of them because Shaq's gravity, just when it came to the offensive end, was so strong. He'd get you 2 or 3 defenders sucked in just guarding him. That allowed Kobe a lot of easy opportunities to score. And when defenses wanted to double team Kobe, that left Shaq just being handled by just maybe one defender or not good help defenders in that situation. So that allowed for him to get easy buckets, easy dunks and whatnot. So it's like vice versa. They complemented each other so well. And I feel big men have an easier time at creating their offense, even more so than guards. Even in this era, it's still easier for a big man to score compared to a guard because again, just you're a big man, you're 7 feet, you can still create your shot, you have that ability, but with a guard, it's just much harder to create offense when teams are double and triple teaming you. So I think this is definitely a problem now for Anthony Edwards. Whereas with Cat in New York, he's thriving great. You could say he has Jalen Brunson and he has a much more talented team, which is true, but he's showing just how great of a player he was. And Anthony Edwards is now on the short end of the stick where he's struggling to get these wins. He's less efficient, and I think everyone's starting to see now, if they haven't seen it in the past, that this was a very bad trade. This was a ripoff, just of epic proportions. Look at Anthony Edwards' numbers compared to Cat's. Cat is averaging the same amount of points, 25.3 points per game, but his efficiency destroys Anthony Edwards' efficiency. Cat is shooting 55 overall from the field and 44 from three. That is much higher than what Anthony Edwards is shooting from the field and from three. So he's playing on another level, which shows you what a great player he was, but also how Anthony Edwards is hurting without him. And it's a damn shame if you're a Timberwolves fan that what was going to be a promising duo for years to come was broken up too early just due to a cheap owner. That's the only reason those two are not together. So it is sad if you're a Timberwolves fan that potential greatness was taken away from you. It's like bittersweet because the Timberwolves fans have been through this before with Garnett and Marbury. Granted, Garnett was a much better player than Marbury, but it still hurt when Marbury forced his way out to get traded, and Garnett never really had the sidekick he needed after that. So this one is going to sting as much for Timberwolves fans for years to come. I don't think they will ever be able to replace a player like Cat's talent to complement Anthony Edwards. Right now, it's showing. It's pretty bad. It reminds me of back in the day when the Hornets broke up their duo of Alonzo Mourning and Larry Johnson. That was also due to George Shinn, the owner at the time, being a cheapskate. Alonzo Mourning was traded for Glenn Rice, who was a good player. He averaged 20 points like Alonzo, but his impact on the game wasn't as great as Alonzo, especially when it came to the defensive end. And the Hornets ended up taking a step back from being a really good team to just barely a playoff contending team once they traded Alonzo for Glenn Rice. And even though they improved later on, they were never as great as what they could have been if they had kept Alonzo. So that's an example of that. You look at just the Lakers, not the Lakers, the Orlando Magic with Shaq and Penny. Just when Shaq left, that's when Penny started to struggle, and they were supposed to be a dynamic duo when it came to guards and bigs. You look at just the Lakers when Shaq left Kobe. Kobe struggled for a few years to be able to win games until he got the bailout of Pau Gasol. So that shows you how hard it is to come back from a trade that strips you of one of your young duos, young stars in the duo combination. Just it's very difficult to come back from, and a lot of teams never come back from that. I just look at when Seattle Supersonics, they traded Sean Kemp for Vin Baker back during the late 90s. They never regained the relevancy they had with Sean Kemp and Payton. Those two were amazing together. Payton and Vin Baker, they were good, but they weren't great. They never had the success that Payton and Kemp had. So I think Timberwolves are going to have that tragic story years from now when people look back on this, just of what could have been. And I think this will also pertain to Anthony Edwards' struggles going forward. Will he still be a good player? Yes. But will he be effective in getting wins for his team as he was with Cat? I don't think so. I think his scoring might increase, but his efficiency is going to decrease. I just think he has a hard time figuring out how to play with these doubles now. So I don't think he's going to be able to improve on his efficiency with the way things are, unless the Timberwolves make some moves to get another legit star player in there. But I don't know who they can get that can replace what Cat once did for them. I think it's pretty bleak for them and Anthony Edwards' future going forward. He's going to be a martyr for this team. Just I see him leading them to a bunch of first round exits the way things are set up now, that he may get them in the playoffs, but they're going to have the same type of struggles that Kevin Garnett Timberwolves had for many years, where they were just a first round and out team. And they had that one time where they were lucky enough to get to the Western Conference Finals, but that was like a blip. And I think that'll be the blip for Anthony Edwards there. He will fight hard, struggling to get wins for this team for years to come. He may be able to lead them to playoffs, like I said, but there'll be a bunch of first round exits.